Vernon Hall, Chapter 15. Hugo's Treachery. I awoke in my bed. My neck was stiff, and I experienced a terrible pain each time I attempted to swallow. I coughed, and the pain grew more intense. I felt drowsy, hardly able to open my eyes, and I turned to see who else was in the room. I saw Gareth bending over me, staring at me with his round, anxious eyes. Eleanor, thank goodness you're finally awake. I have sent for the doctor. He'll visit you soon. I continued to cough and tried to sit up in bed. Gareth assisted me and kept my pillow upright so that I could lean against it. I should have thanked him, but upon remembering that he had followed me and had seen me with Ezekiel, his sight vexed me. Why are you still here, Gareth? And where is Bertha? I moaned from the pain. Gareth immediately opened the door and called out to Bertha. A few moments later, the sweet woman rushed in. "Oh, my miss, are you feeling better now? Was it that horrible woman? Did she do this to you?" Bertha was hysterical. I wanted to nod, but I glanced at Gareth, who looked at Bertha inquiringly. "What did you see, Gareth?" I asked. He blinked his round eyes several times, put his finger to his lip, and contemplated. It was definitely a woman. I could tell from her long hair. But honestly, Eleanor, it was so dark, I couldn't see her face. Bertha sobbed. "It was her, miss. Who else could it be?" I raised my eyebrows to warn Bertha, and she went silent. Gareth glanced at us both. "Do you know this woman, Eleanor?" he inquired. I remained calm as I answered, "We don't know, Gareth. We have seen a woman here at Vernon Hall, but we don't know who she is." "Eleanor, she's dangerous. She tried to kill you. Let me inform the chief inspector of this." "No, Gareth," I said sternly. "No one is to be informed of this. In fact, I don't even know why you fetched the doctor. Bertha can look after me. Thank you for helping me. You've done enough," I stated coldly. Gareth was shocked, as was Bertha. She stuttered, then fell silent. Gareth had been humiliated enough. I thought he would leave without another word. But he continued to sit, his gaze lowered as if in deep thought. He finally nodded and spoke softly. "You are right, Eleanor. No one can look after you better than Bertha. Eleanor, forgive me for invading your privacy, but please do understand. Miss Vernon was very kind to me. She treated me like a son. When I developed smallpox as a child after Mamma's death, people would recoil from me, fearing that they would contract the disease. But Miss Vernon was so generous. She was the only one who would nurse me. This is just one of the many acts of kindness she showed me. And as you are her ward, I always feel it is my duty to do what's best for you." I could see Bertha was touched as she looked at him sentimentally with tearful eyes. Frankly, I was too. Any revelation regarding Amelia's acts of charity would move me and elevate her further in my eyes. I sighed and closed my eyes, reminiscing about her. Suddenly, Bertha asked, "Miss, what were you doing out so late at night?" Garrett turned his face aside, as if pretending not to know the answer to that question. I again raised my eyebrows to indicate silence. She grew quiet once more. "Well, I enjoy walking along the cliffs at night to view the sea and the stars. I'm sure Eleanor was doing the same," Gareth offered, trying his best to protect me. He smiled at me. He had done the honorable thing by not disclosing my meeting with Ezekiel, and so for the first time, I permitted myself a delicate smile, reciprocating his. He then exclaimed, "Very well then, I shall leave, Eleanor. I will ask the doctor not to come, if that's what you wish." "Thank you, Gareth, but I don't need a doctor, nor do I need the chief inspector. Do give my regards to Pastor Franklin." Gareth then contemplated for a moment before saying, Eleanor, when you are better, I will take you to the woodlands. There is something significant there that I must show you. In fact, it is something that has puzzled me for years. Perhaps you may be able to solve that perplexing riddle. At this, Gareth bowed humbly and exited my chamber. I wondered what it was that Gareth wished to show me in the woodlands, that perplexing riddle as he had termed it. I was apprehensive. Bertha and I were now alone. Forgive me for keeping secrets, Bertha. I feel ashamed from withholding anything from you. The truth is, I went to meet Ezekiel at his cabin by the sea. The look of anxiety on Bertha's face turned to indignation. Her plump cheeks went crimson, and she looked at me reproachfully. Miss, that was very irresponsible of you. Mr. Lloyd seems like a polite gentleman, but we don't know anything about him. I hope he wasn't too forward with you. Bertha had never been this serious, and in truth, I was remorseful. I only shook my head and fell into an apologetic silence. What I don't understand, miss, is why you didn't tell the pastor's boy about the parlor maid's ghost. I didn't want to tell him about the ghost, otherwise he would deem me mad. They all do in any case. Bertha sat beside me. But miss, he said he saw a woman with his own eyes, she exclaimed. Yes, Bertha, but he didn't see her the way you and I have. He didn't see her face. He wouldn't believe us. It's best if we don't make a fuss over this situation. If they question my sanity, who knows what these people may do? They may even take Vernon Hall away from me, and worse. Amelia's casket, I shrieked. What is it, miss? Bertha grasped my arm. Bertha, I'm not able enough to go down into the dungeon. Will you please go and check on her? I asked, nearly in tears. Bertha looked at me mournfully. I'll go and check on her, miss. She touched my cheek warmly and left. I hadn't quite recuperated from my ordeal and was bedridden for a few days following the demonic parlour maid's attack. During that time, Bertha dutifully went into the dungeon and reported back to me. She's all right, miss, she would smile solemnly. In addition to my neck, my entire body ached and my legs felt numb. All the while I thought of Ezekiel and that extraordinary moment on the boat under the moon. I thought of his sparkling hazel eyes. But I felt lonesome and despondent. It had been over a week and Ezekiel hadn't visited. Perhaps he awaited me at his cabin. I was afraid of losing. My mind was flooded by all sorts of emotional thoughts when I heard Bertha admonishing someone on the landing outside my bedchamber one night. You have no right to be here. Mrs. Unwell. When she's better, she will pay you. You must go outside, Hugo, or else, she threatened. Or else what, old lady? Hugo roared. I felt a sudden rush of repugnance for the scoundrel and dragged myself from the bed. I flung open the door and stepped onto the landing. What is the meaning of this? How dare you enter the house without my permission? The monster of a man pushed Bertha aside and stomped menacingly in my direction. I was horrified, as was Bertha. I've worked for Miss Vernon for years. How is it possible she never left anything for me in her will? I want my share, and I want it now. I fixed my glare at him, and my body trembled with both fear and hatred for this despicable man. She didn't leave you anything. In fact, she didn't leave anybody anything except me. If you don't believe me, go and ask Mr. Bartholomew. I want you to get out of Vernon Hall forever. I no longer require your services. You are an abhorrent man. Get out, I shouted. The monstrous man grew red. You miserable creature, he growled. He stormed at me, gripping my weak and afflicted throat, and pushed me to the floor. Bertha screamed and cried and tried to pull him off me. Get away from her, you devil of a man, she screeched. But the diabolical man was indeed very strong, stronger than the parlour maid. His grip was like iron. My heart pounded and I choked. For a moment I thought I would die. I had survived the parlour maid's attack due to Garrett's intervention. But who would rescue me now? And as if it were by divine intervention, I heard another shout from downstairs. Eleanor! Eleanor, where are you? It was Ezekiel's deep growl. Bertha shouted back, Up here, sir! Please help her! Hugo is trying to kill her! I heard a few loud thuds, and before I lost all consciousness, Ezekiel tore the demon off me like a tiger flinging a deer with his mighty paw. He struck Hugo's face several times until it was drenched in blood. He kicked the fiend's stomach, and Hugo groaned in pain. Ezekiel then lifted him by his collar and was about to strike one final blow when I screamed, Stop, Ezekiel, stop! Don't mar your hands. We will call the constable. Ezekiel halted. His clenched fist paused in midair. He exhaled sharply, and the wounded monster opened his eyes slowly to look at Ezekiel, terror-stricken as if he had seen a ghost. You! It can't be! He shrieked. The balustrade Hugo was leaning against snapped, and he fell. But Ezekiel grabbed his arm. For a few moments, Ezekiel tried his best to lift him, but Hugo's arm eventually slipped, and he crashed to the main hall floor. Ezekiel darted downstairs. He checked Hugo's pulse, then looked up at me and Bertha, shaking his head. Bertha and I watched from the upstairs landing. We stood aghast, both paralyzed with fright. I was unable to speak and could hardly stand. I fell to my knees. Bertha stuttered. Whatever will we do, sir? What will become of us now? She cried. Ezekiel knelt beside Hugo's body. He held his hands to his head and contemplated. After a few moments, he spoke calmly. You both don't have to worry about this. I shall take him in my boat and fling him into the sea. If anyone should ask, just tell them he is no longer in your employment, and you aren't privy to his whereabouts. Bertha stuttered again in a frenzied tone, and Ezekiel then growled, For God's sake, woman, he tried to kill your mistress. He got what he deserved. Now don't lament over it. When the clock struck midnight, Ezekiel stealthily carried Hugo's body on his back out of Vernon Hall to the shores. Bertha and I watched from the cliffs. We saw him row his boat far out to sea, under the foreboding pale moon, and fling Hugo's body into the depths. At last, that treacherous man was gone. But I suddenly remembered Hugo's reaction upon seeing Ezekiel. He hadn't only seemed to recognize him, but was startled at seeing him. I was too horror-stricken to ask any questions or to comment at all. Bertha and I only stood huddled together in an oppressing and ominous silence.